Good evening. I'm Tony Randall, your host for this evening's performance of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Ballet. This wonderfully rich ballet is full of fantastic characters and magic set to romantic music and dance of the 19th century. But as you'll see, it also has a psychological element which is strikingly modern. Have you ever had a memory of something that happened a long time ago? Something that seems not quite real and wondered if it was only a dream? Our story tonight is that kind of memory, the long-ago Christmas of a girl named Clara. Clara may remind you of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz or Alice from Alice in Wonderland. For Clara, too, has a dream world where she escapes from reality. While the adventures of Dorothy and Alice have been told in words and in song, Clara's story is told through dance, accompanied by the music of the great Russian composer Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. As the ballet begins, the adult Clara is thinking back to a particular Christmas Eve from her childhood. She remembers the nightmare which began that special evening, a dream in which Clara was terrified by a giant mouse. Our first glimpse of the darker side of Clara's childhood imagination. Clara recalls the family parlor that night ablaze with lights and dancing guests. Soon, through Clara's memory, we meet the most eagerly awaited guest of the evening, Herr Drosselmeyer, Clara's godfather, eagerly awaited because of the gifts he brings the children. But even here, in kindly Drosselmeyer, there is a touch of darkness. To Clara, he was a strange man, mysterious. She was enchanted by him, but also frightened. Nevertheless, judging by his gift to her this Christmas, Clara is Drosselmeyer's favorite. He winds up the clockwork mechanism of the beautiful toy theater, and a magical miniature ballet begins. The title of tonight's ballet refers to this Christmas tree ornament in the shape of a nutcracker. It is Clara's favorite. As the party ends and darkness fills the house, Clara tries to fall asleep, but having no more success at that than any child on Christmas Eve, she gets up and sneaks back down to the dark, empty parlor. And then the real magic of the story begins. A story which has delighted audiences since its first performance almost 100 years ago. You might not know it, but in 19th century Europe, the sight of a mouse was not considered an unusual event. In the finest homes, mice were a fact of life. But on that Christmas Eve, as Clara remembers it, the particular group of house mice awaiting her in the darkened parlor was fairly difficult to ignore. Tonight's performance is the story of heroic battles between armies of mice and toy soldiers, of love and jealousy, of magic and mystery and transformation. We'll see Clara emerge into a beautiful grown woman, longing for a kind of magic which only the Nutcracker can perform, as he is transformed into the prince of little Clara's dreams. This production was staged by the Pacific Northwest Ballet, choreographed by Kent Stowell and designed by the noted author and illustrator of children's books, Maurice Sendak. The film version was directed by Carol Ballard, director of the motion pictures Never Cry Wolf and The Black Stallion. And now, Act One of the Nutcracker Ballet. Toy theaters and toy soldiers were the favorite playthings of children in the 19th century. The toy theater, which we saw in Act One of tonight's performance, and which we'll see later in Herr Drosselmeyer's workshop, serves two purposes in the story of the Nutcracker: as a symbol of Drosselmeyer's affection for Clara, and also as an early demonstration of his magic. We'll see that magic even more vividly in Act Two, which begins in a few moments. The production we're seeing tonight is different from some other productions in that it more closely follows the original story by E.T.A. Hoffmann, which was The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. By following the Hoffmann story, tonight's production brings out some of the darker, more sinister aspects of the tale, which you can see especially in the rather ambiguous character of Herr Drosselmeyer. As you watch the ballet, you might suppose that the dancers' movements were designed to accompany the music. Actually, Tchaikovsky's music was commissioned to fit the choreography, which was already prepared. Marius Petipa, chief choreographer of St. Petersburg's Mariinsky Theater, now known as the Kirov, gave Tchaikovsky detailed instructions such as how many bars of music would be needed to accompany a given action on the stage. The music Tchaikovsky wrote for Petipa was so brilliant that it has not only stood the test of time, it has stood on its own, without story, choreography, sets, or dancers, in concert performances throughout the world. In fact, the music known as the Nutcracker Suite has been performed on its own more often than the ballet it was written for. The second act of the Nutcracker contains several examples of what are called divertissements. That is, spectacular dance sequences intended purely as diversion and entertainment, rather than as part of the story. The act begins with Clara and her prince sailing to a palace in the sea, where they are greeted, quite inexplicably, by Herr Drosselmeyer costumed as a fantastic sultan from the Arabian Nights. Clara and the prince reenact their battle with the Mouse King to the delight of the palace children. Drosselmeyer, of course, is not at all delighted by the spectacle of the prince's bravery in battle. And so, to show his superior power and magic, he conjures up a series of magnificent dances to entertain Clara. These are the divertissements. As these dances end, Clara and her prince will perform the finale, the famous Pas de Dieu. And now, Act 2 of the Nutcracker Ballet. We hope you enjoyed this performance of the Nutcracker. This is Tony Randall. Good evening.